Hi, this is part 2 of our presentation on photosynthesis, and we're going to start our conversation with energy transfer and talking really specifically about this molecule chlorophyll. So, chlorophyll is found in our chloroplast, and chlorophyll actually absorbs the sun energy. And yes, you may remember that chlorophyll is indeed green. However, that's not what makes it special. When chlorophyll is contacted by sunlight, there are electrons that get excited, and these electrons have a lot of energy. Think of them like moving around really quickly. And in that energy, that energy can really be harvested and stored. So, in talking about energy transfer and some details of photosynthesis, we are going to be introducing a new molecule for energy storage. So, NADPH, and then the other molecule we've already talked about is ATP. So now we have another molecule in the picture here, and those two molecules are going to be storing energy so that the chloroplast can make its food. This is a picture that you're pretty much already familiar with, but it shows the entire process of photosynthesis. So here's our chloroplast. We have our light-dependent reactions, our light-independent reactions, also known as the Calvin cycle. And we're going to be starting by looking at the details of the light-dependent reactions and then moving on to the light-independent reactions. So in the light-dependent reactions, it's very important that we note that the light-dependent reactions require sunlight and water. Okay, this is why we should hopefully know that plants need sun and water in order to live. The process takes place in the thylakoid membrane. So our thylakoids are those discs, and this process is going to happen in essentially the membrane, that this portion of the discs. And what is produced by this process? So we have oxygen and then two energy storing molecules that are going to provide the fuel required for the second reaction of photosynthesis. So just a little review. The light-dependent reactions require sunlight and water, hence light-dependent. They happen in the thylakoid discs, and they produce oxygen, which, not for nothing, is really kind of a waste product, and NADPH, as well as ATP, which are energy storing molecules. So in the light dependent reactions, we have our chlorophyll, and chlorophyll is going to absorb that sun's energy. And this is the way the chlorophyll molecule actually looks. Again, the chlorophyll is found inside the thylakoids of the chloroplast. And I just thought this picture over here was pretty neat because all those little kind of greenish blue dots, those are chloroplasts within the plant cells. So just kind of like that picture. So here we go. In our light-dependent reactions, we have sunlight coming in, water coming in to our thylakoid disc. And what is released as a byproduct is that oxygen. And then here is our energy burst. And our energy burst is really referring back to our NADPH and ATP molecules. So those are cellular energy. That's cellular energy. And in this video here, it looks at the details of the process that's utilized to make those high energy molecules called the electron transport chain. So here we go. It's a model, it's a cartoon picture, and it looks kind of like the model that you have already completed for your notes. A couple of things I want to draw your attention to here. This kind of two-layered sandwich is the thylakoid membrane. This is the inside of the thylakoid, and this is the stroma, that area outside of the thylakoid. These areas here, these are photosystems, that I'm coloring in green because they contain chlorophyll. When it says a photon is referring to light. So I drew them in the past as kind of like a squiggly line. So photons, light is coming in, and light is absorbed by the chlorophyll. It excites electrons. In exciting the electrons, water is broken down, releasing hydrogen in this space and oxygen. We see oxygen over here. And as we follow along the electron transport chain, we're following along here. We're following our electron. It's passed along. And these are just kind of proteins passing along the electrons. And it hits the second area where there's chlorophyll called photosystem 1. And it absorbs light again, and these electrons get even more excited. And they end up with NADP plus as the final electron acceptor, which takes that electron, adds on a hydrogen, and here we get our NADPH, our energy storing molecule, one of them at least. Now, in the process of this electron transport chain, we have something really cool happening. Hydrogen ions are being pulled across the membrane, and they're accumulating inside here. It's a lot of them. We know about diffusion. When you have a high concentration of molecules, they're going to try to move to an area of lower concentration. And in that, these hydrogen ions move through a protein channel. And this protein channel is called ATP synthase. ATP synthase twists, and in twisting forms ATP. That energy from the twisting adds an extra phosphate to ADP. So now we have ATP and NADPH that get to go on and provide the fuel for our next reaction, which is called the light independent reactions. So I know it's a little confusing because there's multiple kind of similar sounding words here. So the light dependent reactions depend on photons of light. The light independent reactions do not depend on light. However, they can occur if it's light out. That's fine. That's not a problem. But they can occur without the presence of light. So I'm just kind of going back and erasing some of our marks here as we prepare to move on to the light independent reactions. Now, the light independent reactions are also called the Calvin cycle. So just the name itself probably implies to you that it's a process that involves kind of multiple rounds, a cycle, kind of going around and around and around, think of like a bicycle or a motorcycle with its wheels, right? So in the Calvin cycle, or the light independent reactions, we've got, and just as a heads up, I've included some questions in this presentation for you to answer on your own. These are review questions. Think about them, think about your answers as you kind of conclude your study of the light-dependent reactions, and we move on to the Calvin cycle. So again, no light is required, and this process occurs in the stroma. So the stroma is that space outside of the thylakoids, the stroma. The ATP produced, as well as the NADPH and carbon dioxide, are used to create sugar. For every 6 molecules of CO2, 1 sugar molecule is produced. And specifically that sugar, it's a simple sugar, in most cases glucose. And that glucose is the food for the plant to do all the things it needs to do, including to grow. Without sunlight, plants can't grow and eventually, can't sustain their own functions. So keep that in mind. These sugars, the simple sugars, glucose, are used then to build more complex carbohydrates like starches and cellulose. So again, here we go. We've got our CO2 coming in. We have energy, that ATP and NADPH, and that is used to make C6H12O6, or a 6-carbon sugar food, also known as glucose. And this is another representation of the Calvin cycle in that cyclical form, that circle form. It's going to go around and create that glucose molecule, incorporating CO2. So there are some review questions about the Calvin cycle, including specifically where carbon dioxide is incorporated into the cycle. Thanks so much, and I hope this helps.